Welcome back to another episode of the Girl Stop Playing podcast. It's your favorite homegirl, Coriel, here to encourage you to stop playing with your potential and start working for what you want in life and in love. You already know that I believe you can make the money and get the honey. You can have it all as long as you are willing to work. And it's my goal to bring you the information and the conversations to help you do just that. Now, before I introduce you to today's guest, please make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, like this video, and get ready to comment below and let us know something that you are taking away from today's conversation. Now, you know that we are in for a treat whenever we have the opportunity to have a healthily, I don't know if that's a word, but this is a happily, healthily married couple that we got in the building. We have Mr. and Mrs. I know that your last name is James, but when I looked at you to say that, I'm like, you know what? I know that your first name is not actually Maddie. Maddie is short for your first name.
No, Maddie is the name. So that's the story. So the story is that
in this introduction. Go ahead.
So the thing is, I think Maddie obviously is like a nickname for so many people, and it's spelled with an I-E. So a lot of people think it's a short name. My dad's name is Matthew, so obviously they call him Matt. But back in '84, when I was born, they weren't sure if I was going to be a boy or girl, so they were going to name me Matt. But then I came out a girl, so then they came up with Maddie. Yeah.
Can I explain myself? Okay, now
Maya.
I was about to say, now girl,
Maya's story is wrong. Maya,
okay.
my sister, is different.
I was like, now if I got this wrong, she's really gonna kill me. Okay. We all just learned something. Okay, so we have the Jameses in the building. Maddie and Chris are here. Y'all welcome.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm excited to talk to y'all. It's always a treat when I can have a couple in the building because, you know, it'd be pulling teeth to get these men down to the studio. But Chris is in the look at his face.
Look at it.
Pulling. Why the husbands?
We were so excited to see you.
I am glad.
We saw you guys.
Look, and the men, I'm like, y'all men need to get like a support group or something. A husband, father, manly man.
They need to like have like more like guy strips and stuff. Like they really do because
We're working on it.
Yeah,
Me and the men behind the scenes, we're working on it.
Yeah, it's the
he's like
thing.
part of the men's group at his church, which is so great because it's like all of them are like in the same walk of life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because like even our pastor's a millennial with small kids, so like all of them can relate to each other.
And that's the thing as we like go through these life transitions. And like you mentioned, we saw y'all. I had a baby like a week prior.
No, literally, you were outside.
Girl, I could not wait to get outside. Okay, you know, I was like in jail, like in a jail cell, crossing off on the calendar. I had crossed off that last day. Okay, and I was ready to get outside. But seeing other people, probably like the look on our face was just like somebody who understands what is happening. Anytime I see a mom, it's just like, this is real ghetto. Anytime we're together and we see a couple, we're like, man, how are y'all doing it? And I think it was one of those moments like, y'all have 3 kids.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Yeah.
Y'all have 3 children.
We do.
Yeah.
How? Tell the people how old your children are and then just like how is life lifing?
So we have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, Mesa, Caliana, and Christian. Mesa is 8, Caliana is 5, and Christian is 3.
That's kind of wild because I've like seen them grow up. Like,
yeah, they pretty much have grown up online.
Seriously,
so,
because you were you when you had your first child. So the people who are like true to this and not new to this, we've literally seen you become a mother and. You say 8, and I'm like, oh my God, how old am I?
Yeah.
If I've seen
people like are upset, especially because Christian, our son, who is our youngest, he was a pandemic baby. He was born on the first day of 2020. He was born New Year's Day. So him and my father-in-law actually have the same birthday.
Wow.
So it's just funny. So people will see him. They're like, no, this is not the baby because he's 3. And I was like, no.
He's grown now. So, Chris, was it important to you to try for a son or were you cool with 2 girls?
No, I was actually good with 2 girls. Our birth story actually is, you know, we have 3 kids and we have 2 angel babies. Yeah. So by the time Christian came around, Christian was our 5th pregnancy. And so with all of the things that we did to get the 2 here, I was like, you know,
whatever
you don't have to do this. If you don't want to, you know?
Yes. You don't have to.
And because I grew up with like, in like a predominantly male environment, I was like, we cool. Like, we not that cool. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a boy.
Yeah.
So
really
we had a
need
bunch
none of
of them.
these.
We had a bunch of nephews. I was like,
Gotcha.
you can. But Maddie had the complete opposite experience. Like, all her mom has five other sisters.
It's me and Maya. It's just the two of us. So I've never had a brother.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my cousins are girls as well. So I wanted that energy, and then especially because he's right. He did grow up in a predominantly male environment, and I love my brothers-in-law. Like, they're so wonderful, and they have sons, and I love my nephews. And I was like, I would love to have this experience because I've had such a positive one so far. Marrying into Chris's family. So I was like, you know what? Let's try for it. Chris is right. We've had every single birth experience. We had the C-section. I've done the natural, no pain management whatsoever. And then I've had anesthesia. I didn't get an epidural. But we've had all of those. And, that is really taxing. Like, labor is hard. But I really like being a mom. I really do.
Okay, we're gonna unpack that statement, and we're gonna get back to that. But I want to kind of circle back around to the birth experience. Sure. I was not aware. Your girl be trying to do a little bit of research, but I was not aware of this. How did that affect your relationship? I think, and are y'all okay with talking about it?
For sure.
Okay. The reason I really want to kind of go back into that a little bit is because these are those topics that people experience. It's a tough. No matter how you think you're prepared, you can't prepare for that. You can have the best partner in the world and it still be very painful. And when you're the one going through it, if you haven't heard someone else's experience, you're beating yourself up. You're thinking that you did something wrong. Something must be wrong with so what was your experience like? And then if you are at a point where you could possibly either of you offer advice to someone who may go through something similar, how do they get through it?
Yeah, I mean, we both have two very different but necessary perspectives, because, I was the only one going through it physically, but, emotionally, that is so impactful to a couple. And I think what it was for me was, I think our first miscarriage, which we had before we had Mazo, was really what gut punched us as a couple, as a unit. That was really, really hard.
How far before Mazo?
Was that 3 years?
2.5 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah. And
it was in 2011. We got married in 2009. First miscarriage was in 2011.
Yeah, we had her in 2014. Yeah. And it was just hard. It was physically the hardest thing I had ever done. It was really, really hard. And of course, you know the concept of a miscarriage. You don't ever expect that it'll be you. It's actually very common, which we learned later on, but you just don't expect it. One of my favorite things about my husband is how honestly, how anointed he is, how he just gets the word immediately, his relationship with God. It's definitely helped me grow in my faith. But it was the first time I had ever seen Chris question God. That is how much it rocked us. And it was just tough. And then we didn't talk about it. We weren't in therapy at the time. We didn't talk about it. So it was that thing we swept under the rug, and then we started tripping over the rug, And so we did get to a point where we did end up getting pregnant, had a healthy pregnancy. The labor was pretty traumatic. I ended up having an emergency C-section, lost a lot of blood to the point where they wanted to give me a transfusion. I was like, baby, it's between me and God, so no thanks. And that was a lot. And then probably about 1.5 years later, we got separated. And a lot of that was deeply rooted in not unpacking.
The unhealed.
We were depressed for literally 4 years?
So we spent a good 5 years in like a active an active depression.
Yeah.
It was one of those.
What did that look like things from your perspective, Chris? Like personally, and then your perception of what Maddie was going through.
It just looked like work. I realized that my coping mechanism was working more. Like I always thought I could just work my way out of things, right? Physical labor, right? And I've always been a fairly introspective person, but what I learned on the back end is that I had to do more of the mental and emotional and spiritual work because, like Maddie said, I really did. I started questioning faith, and even to the point where I lost faith, right? Where it just didn't seem like it served me. And, eventually you realize that that's not you that has that idea. But, that idea comes from an enemy that's trying to get you further away from where you're supposed to be. But yeah, like Maddie spoke to the first one, it was it was just one of those things where you know, looking back on it, you're young, you don't know. It's a trial that you have to go through where it's like, you know, I did everything right. Right?
Why me? How did this happen to me?
Why me, right? Like I'm the person that like
I love you
tried
though.
to color
God.
inside the lines.
Yeah.
You know, tried to color inside the lines, try to do the honoring the parents thing, you know, take care of my responsibilities at home and in the world, you know, approach the world as a responsible citizen. And it was just like, man, why me, right? And so you realize once you enter into this club, you know, of miscarriages and the Angel Baby Club, that it's a pretty big club.
It's a huge club.
But it's one of those things that we don't talk about until you get there. And then you notice that, you know, when you come across people, it's just the silent acknowledgement. It's the, oh yeah, I've been there. And one of the things that really helped me get through it is that once we started to seek counsel on it, my spiritual counselor, my pastor, he had gone through it too. And the key takeaway when we went to individual counseling and marriage counseling and couples counseling while we were trying to, you know, get our stuff together was we didn't know that you were supposed to allow for the grieving process, right? When you go through it medically, you know, the medical profession has such like a jaded approach to it. It's like, yeah, this happens all the time. You know,
like an in and out, a procedure, not a person.
It's totally that. Yeah.
And it's not something that they really consider that you have to labor with that entire process. They're just like, you know, physically you're okay, try again. That's pretty much what they told us.
But emotionally, you have to go through a process, you know?
Right?
And it's not just you who's going physically through it; it's your partner as well.
That's the part.
And that was really, I mean, that was a big revelation, I think, for me in counseling for us in therapy.
So had y'all gone to therapy? Had you gone to therapy like premarital or pre any of this or post? Was that like your first time going
We
into
had done premarital, but since once we got married, we had never done therapy until we got separated.
Yeah.
So what was immediately prior to the separation? What was like the final straw?
I just think everything. I think everything just came together. It'd be like, you know, arguments. It would be, you know, focusing on work instead of each other. It would just be like, it just was, we were literally not ourselves. We were just like, it was like we had masks on. We were like not ourselves.
We got caught up. Like we got too deep into our coping mechanisms, right? And because of our personality types, what ended up happening is because I lean introvert, I just got within myself, right? And then Maddie is
extrovert, like textbook
extrovert,
so
right?
I was just doing so much.
Yeah,
I was
just all over the place,
traveling,
moving,
doing work, trying to just.
But
doing
you
too
had
much.
one child already.
Mesa was about.
and so yeah, when we got separated, she was about 2. So I, you know, trapped myself. I lost myself in like the work of just like being a dad and securing this one, right? Because I had felt when we had the first one, it was like we had the first miscarriage. I could not. There's an insecurity that comes in like knowing as a man I couldn't do anything about this, right? Like I couldn't protect my wife from this. I couldn't protect the baby from this. I'm supposed to be doing this, right? And so by the time Mesa came, I didn't realize I was kind of like overdoing it in the dad department.
Like overcompensating.
Yeah. And then with Maddie, because she was just like so like out in the world, because from what we uncovered during therapy is that even though we had the second baby, the pain of the first, like not being able to get it done, it was a lot for her, right? And both I and Mesa reminded her of that.
Yeah.
And so because I couldn't get through on that end,
you focus your attention.
Focus there, and we just stopped talking. And I mean, you know, everybody knows the key to the relationship is just like communicate.
Yep.
But I felt like
y'all like walking through the house like I'm passing you on the stairs and I'm not speaking.
No, not really. It was just more.
But y'all weren't having deep conversations.
Yeah, nothing was deep. It was just like
no depth.
all right, do what you got to do. I see you when I see you.
And then it was just, you know, a big argument. one day, and it was just like, it was just like one of us has to leave. I'm the extrovert, so I was already moving a lot. I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave. We were separated probably for about 4 months.
Girl, where did you go, girl?
I went and I got an apartment, and I got
Nowhere really.
nowhere. When I say I was literally down the street.
Nowhere really. Honestly, I was like, this isn't gonna work if you're always here.
If you don't leave.
Yeah.
You have to leave if you're gonna leave.
That was low key kind of hilarious. It was like, we're not even good at being separated. It's like, if you're here every day, then why are we paying a rent, somewhere? And thank God for our village. I mean, and I talk about this all the time, it makes me emotional, but it was like, the way my mother-in-law showed up for me during our separation, you would have thought she was my mother. And, we're really fortunate because I talk about this all the time. Chris is the only person I've dated whose parents were together. Any boyfriend that I've ever had, his parents were divorced or they were never married and they weren't together. And both sets of our parents are, they're married and coincidentally married the same year. So this year, our parents will be married 43 years.
43
years. So my parents this month, and I think his parents in August. And so, and they're certainly not perfect. I don't say that, but to have an example of what it looks like to work through,
to fight through, and to not just throw in the towel.
It's really important. And so then when my mom or my mother-in-law advised me, I could take them seriously.
It's like, you've done this. Yeah. You've been through some things. You're not just talking to me about what you heard about, what you saw on TV, what you think I should do. That's based on literally nothing.
Exactly. And there was also, and I do say this, and I have such a wonderful relationship with my mom. Both of the moms are prayer warriors, thank God. But there was such a level of no judgment from my mother-in-law that literally saved my life. I talk about that all the time. It literally saved my life, because when somebody's going through something, they probably already have a level of internal guilt and shame.
They're already beating themselves up about it.
That any ounce of judgment would have probably broken me down. And so, we did immediately get into, because Chris is about the work. So even though we couldn't stand each other, he found me, my therapist, who ended up being our couples therapist as well. And it was literally prayer and therapy that we got back together.
So obviously you all have this child, so I'm sure, so nobody is like, well, girl, just leave.
Yeah.
What were the messages though? Because so often we're not talking about it, or we're not saying the right things. But I think those examples come from women who have not gone through these things. So they don't necessarily see the need in you fighting for what you have. They don't see the value in keeping this family together. They want to cheer you on your own direction. And that could have led you, in two separate directions. So what was the conversation like with your moms during that time?
I think the thing that was really huge, and you see the opposite so many times, on social media, but the number one piece of advice from both my mom and my mother-in-law is that part of why you fight for your marriage is for your children. We have made marriage so self-absorbed, and it's like, your marriage doesn't just affect you. My marriage affects my children. It definitely affects your spouse. It affects your children. It affects the family that you've made, right? Like, I no longer just have Maya as a sibling, right? I now have 2 brothers and another sister, and actually more, because each of his brothers are married. So they're my sisters as well. I have nieces and nephews because of their commitment in their marriages. And so this is a ripple effect on various people, right? For me too, personally, the thing I love about us is that we were both willing to do the work more than we were willing to let go of it.
Or win the fight, or be right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, we were so, even if it was just an ounce, we were more willing to do the work than be right, And I always say that. I think one of the most important lessons I have learned in my 30s, I just turned 39, so I'm like, in my last year of my 30s, what have I learned that has been so profound? And is that I'm more focused on being ready to work than being right. Like, being right is so useless.
It is.
It's so useless.
After the 30 seconds of you feeling so proud that you're right, then what do you have?
For
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And for me, this was something that was fixable. I understand that there are some people who are in situations that are not fixable. This was fixable. And so I was like, was I going to let my pride prevent me from doing work to fix my marriage, which would have fractured how my daughter would have now seen relationships?
That part.
And that, you know, because that is the number one place, that's the first place you learn about relationships.
And is it worth it? And so
Yeah.
I always bring up the Godfather, Kevin Samuels. Don't close out. Don't log off. Listen, stay with me, okay? Chris, for you, I have to ask really quick. Kevin Samuels, yes or no? How did you feel?
I'm neutral.
Neutral, okay.
But I'm just like that on all things,
Okay,
right? You know, I can see all sides of it, but I'm neutral.
You could take the good, you could leave the bad, you could see.
I feel like he had, in some instances, he had solid messages. His tone and delivery was off a lot of times.
A lot of times.
You know, like if you're really out here trying to help people, you can't be like the helper and the shock jock at the same time. And that's his. That was his issue.
He was, you know, trying to help people in an entertaining way. It wasn't always entertaining. It was like,
sometimes it was just me. Yeah, sometimes it was just me.
The problem was if the entertainment is discouragement,
Mm-hmm.
that's where.
That is where the people have the problem. However, the reason I brought him up is because what you just said when you said like this, it's kind of opposite of what we hear on social media. Social media will have you out here broke,
baby,
without a job, without a man, girl with nothing,
just to be right,
just to
on
be,
social
just
media,
to have your pride, just to be right, just to post,
just for Twitter to agree with you for 6 hours.
Get out of here with that, okay? But Kevin Samuels was saying a lot of the opposite of what is of what's popular on social media, and one of his messages, like common messages that I heard so many times, is he would call women out on being home wreckers, in the sense of having so much pride that they literally wreck their home, that they're, you know, they're saying there's no good men, they're saying they're making all of these complaints, but they're so willing to walk away. They're so willing to want to be right so bad that they're not willing to do the work. They're so willing to say, I'll figure this out on myself, I can be good all by myself, and not think about you know, not think beyond themselves, not think about their children, not think about the extended family, not think about all that you've built that would literally just be crumbling down if you decide I'm going to selfishly walk away. Now, as you said, there's obviously some extenuating circumstances that, you know, if this is going on and if it's best for you to remove yourself, then do that.
This is the context of my situation. Right. You know, this isn't to shame anybody.
No, of course not.
By any means. But yeah, it just wasn't worth it. When I started adding 2 and 2 together, I was like...
Girl, even think about that rent you was down there paying. It's like, the math is not mathing.
Me paying my own bills... Let me be clear.
Because I need to come on back, Chris. I need to come on back.
Was not interested at all.
At all.
And the other blessing is that Chris really is my friend. Because even through that, like, I would be like on the phone with him, like, this rent is like...
I think that was the impetus of everything, man. It was like, when it happened, right? When the separation happened, I already went into it like, I'm just not going to leave you out there. Right, I understand that. Like, this ain't working. Yeah, it was like this ain't gonna. I'm not gonna leave you.
Maddie, you are ridiculous.
No, Maddie was wilding.
Help me in this apartment. I got to leave you.
And the thing is, it's like, girl, what you do is wife. Like, you're not good at this. You're not good at this. So, and what he does is husband. So we were out here. We didn't even know how to be separated, Chav.
So y'all were
like, just fix this.
I mean, I think that's the beauty, though, is that if your foundation is friendship, a lot of times you're eventually gonna like tell a joke, or you're eventually gonna like break the side. It's not gonna be
that was our issue too early, though. Right?
What do you mean?
Because I am the point of levity. Yeah, I know, like, it might not seem that way here, but like it was a little too early. Like, while Maddie was still trying to argue things, I was like, this ain't us. Like, we don't do this. Like, even in like normal situations, we don't, like, I don't yell at you, you don't yell at me. So I throw in a joke and she'd be like, I don't want to hear jokes right now. We're supposed to be upset at each other. I was like, you can be upset if you want, but
he was like laughing at me. He was like, this is not gonna last. Like, he's like, this is not what we do.
Yeah.
And what was funny is very opposite of what happened after our first miscarriage. During our separation, he had so much faith, he had so much joy, or at least if you didn't, you surely put on a good front.
No, I did, because like I said, I fell so deep into that hole of darkness that once we hit rock bottom and we separated, it came to a point where I had to look at myself and be like, you're either going to be here, or if you want this daughter that you've poured so much energy into, to like get the best out of the situation, regardless of what happened, you got to snap it together.
Yeah.
So
Did
that's
she
why I
stay with
lean
you or
heavy.
did she go with Maddie?
She was with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to lean heavily into it was she stayed with me, but I will say it was literally us being me, my daughter, my family, and Maddie's family. All like we're gonna work this out. We're standing in the gap because Maddie's grandmother was watching our daughter while I was at work,
Okay.
and so we was all like, we just gonna stand in
So
the
the
gap for
family was
Maddie
still
in the
family
meantime.
together.
Yeah.
But we gotta like we gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
So were y'all still like going to family functions together?
Nah.
No. Okay.
I was trying my best.
A little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying my best to like keep that line of separation. But like I said, Maddie just kept showing up because I needed the space.
Okay.
No, I
did
needed the
need
space.
that
Like
space. I do think that separation, physical.
I was in bad shape. I was in bad shape. I'm not gonna lie. Like outside of just spiritually, I had lost like 30 pounds.
Yeah, and
I
he's
had
already
developed.
So you were stressed
I
out.
developed like an ulcer. I was like, I need to not be. I need to not
And he doesn't
see
drink
and
and
deal
smoke.
with this,
He
like,
eats
so I could
healthy.
like focus on recovering before we can get back into that stuff. So like, I did need the
I wanna
space.
say, as a woman whose love language is quality time, and I like to be like all up underneath, on top of my man. The
That's
fact
me.
that y'all said
Yeah, that's
the separation, y'all needed that. That is just like
We were in a really bad place. Like now, I am under him all the time, and quality time,
Furthest thing.
it's the furthest thing. Like we took the love languages quiz, and it's the last thing. But we're together all the time because we run our company together now and all of that. But yeah, at that time it was needed, and I think what I learned from that is, to me, one, I learned that both people have to be willing to do the work. One person cannot work on the relationship, So that was, one blessing. But then two, you have got to grieve, when you go through a miscarriage, you have got to grieve and you have got to let your partner grieve, and you guys pull in the necessary resources and tools, right? Like if you need a spiritual advisor, if you need to go to therapy, if you need to be under your family more, like if your parents don't live, in the same state, go fly and be under them. Like you really need to be nurtured.
You know
and
what we
give
didn't
space
mention?
to
What do you mention?
Because I remember when we were talking about tipping point and when we like, because we were operating at whatever that base level was, but
Right.
it's the second miscarriage.
I was about to
Yes,
say,
It
when
was
did this happen?
After
Okay.
Mesa was born.
Yeah, after Maisel was
So
born.
we had the one before, we had Mesa, then we had the one after.
Yep.
Second
that's what-
miscarriage.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what
That is
amplified.
Actually, that is what amplified.
So
the
did
separation
you
for
have
sure.
any postpartum with Mesa?
I did.
Oh, it was
I
it
did.
was
So
I did.
So you never
it was
dealt
a
with the
long
grief.
Yeah, and it was
postpartum
long
period.
because my recovery was so long because of not only having a C-section but the loss of blood. So
Mm.
I had already deemed myself inadequate, and then that second miscarriage was
Just
like,
did you in.
it just like confirmed it, right?
Yeah.
Which is not a truth at all. Only to have 2 kids later,
Mhm,
know.
right.
But yeah, I think that was really, really hard, and I never dealt with that. I never dealt with
So
that.
even the second time, did you all try to deal with it the same way you did with the first?
Yeah, we
which was
just
like-
stayed busy.
we were worse off.
Yeah, we were already worse
Because
off.
we never dealt with it the first
Yeah,
time.
and you now you have a kid, so a lot of your energy that you would have spent to even get over that is now being poured into a child.
So much
Yeah.
to unpack here, because another thing that we don't ever talk about is the impact that becoming parents has on your partnership, even the best partnership. So you all were kind of already operating below where your norm, because you were dealing with the residuals of
Yep.
this first miscarriage. Then you become parents, which
It's so
is
tough.
supposed to be a blessing, right?
Yeah.
This is the blessing. You have successfully made it to the finish line, but
Yep.
then that blessing comes with so much too.
Yeah.
So
Sleep
that's even a
deprivation.
whole thing of like, I don't want to feel ungrateful
Right.
for
Right.
this
Right.
blessing.
Right. Right.
But
But
I'm
you're
hurting.
human.
I'm hurting.
I'm
That's
hurting.
Right. It's
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
And that's what depression is, right? Like I feel this weight and I do not understand
can't
why.
get it
And
off.
I can't get it off.
Yeah, I can't shake
Yep.
it. I don't
Yeah.
feel like myself. So not only do I not feel like myself, I don't feel like your wife.
Yep.
Because I'm not even me. So
I'm not
if
even
I'm not
me.
even me, how
Yeah.
can I show up to be my wife?
depressed.
And
I'm
now I got to be a mama.
I'm
Yeah.
breastfeeding. I'm like,
Girl,
I
don't even
care.
Yeah.
don't even bring the boobs into the
Yes,
situation, because
yes.
you are literally pregnancy is a prison. So to break out of prison, and then nurse your child.
Maybe to break out of prison only to be like, oh, these
The
gates
shackles
have.
on my feet. So, girl, listen, it's a thing. It's a whole thing. And that's why anytime I can use this platform to have these conversations, it's like, this is real life. And you don't know until it is your life.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know until it's here. And you think that you're the only one who's gone through this. It's like, no, girl, this is what they've been doing for ages.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It's hard.
It's so hard. So yeah, that was the second miscarriage definitely, like, that's what really made the ish hit the fan, I guess you could say.
Because we didn't have it.
After Mesa.
11 months.
Okay.
Yeah, like right at the year.
11 months. We got pregnant at 11 months after Mesa was
Yeah.
born.
Also, I add, this is then I also got fired from my 9 to 5 and had transitioned into
Full-time.
blogging and creating full time.
Between Mesa and the second?
Yeah, Mesa was
2014.
9 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2015. So today, to the day is actually,
It is, huh?
what, 8 years ago?
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years ago. So was dealing with that.
So
like
life change after life change after life
after
change.
life. I mean, literally.
And we had a lot of those, like when we first got married, and we didn't understand, what that would do to us, because we were young and in love and ready to face the world. But we had a lot of serious life changes and like grief causing traumatic events early on.
I'm like, we just got good at marriage like 2 years ago.
Because it's so tough adulting just by yourself.
Yeah,
It is.
And imagine having to like come home and see this person. I mean, y'all can imagine. Let me look at y'all. Imagine having to come home and see this person while you don't even know who you are every day. I mean, that is
tough.
it's inexplicable, which is wwhy anytime I can talk to somebody who can relate, I'm like, y'all, how are y'all doing it? What is going on?
Yeah.
So did you feel like once you shook off, like you got back together, you're no longer separated, you have like a new lease on life, you all get pregnant again.
Yeah.
What was your experience like with Caliana?
Caliana's pregnancy was literally miraculous in all the ways, And so the reason why I had such a really hard pregnancy with Mesa and why I had the 2 miscarriages was because of fibroids. I had 3 very large fibroids. I've always been petite, but these fibroids were pretty massive.
Did you know you had
And
fibroids?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Once we had the first miscarriage, I think that's when I found
It was the
out.
first, that's
the
when
first
we
time.
identified it. Yeah.
So one day, I write about this in the book. One day I go for, I think it was right when we hit 3rd trimester with Callie. We go for the ultrasound or whatnot. And, we see her, we hear her little heartbeats, everything's cool. But then the nurse is still looking, and I'm like, well, girl, is everything okay? Because we thought we were ready to go.
Girl, the silence.
Yes, I'm like, so she's like really looking. So I'm like, I'm concerned, but I know everything's cool and stuff like that. So I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, this one fibroid that you have had the entire pregnancy is just no longer here. She's like, I have been doing this for 18 years. She's like, she's like, it's not there. She's like, I'm triple checking. That's why we're still here. She's like, it is literally just not there. And I remember because we had been actively praying, like I had even gone vegan after having Mesa for, I think maybe like 3 or 4 months to see if we could help shrink them or whatnot. And actually in each and every one of my pregnancies, I went through what they call fibroid degeneration, where the blood was actually cut off from each of my fibroids, which doesn't necessarily happen for everybody. And so that could also cause, to shrink. But one of them just completely disappeared in Caliana's pregnancy.
And never came back.
Never came back.
I didn't realize that fibroids was like ruining lives out here like this.
It's really ruining lives.
So you said you found out when you had the first miscarriage, but your whole entire life, when you got your annual exams, when you
never
first got pregnant, nobody said
nothing.
That is
Nobody
so
has
crazy.
ever brought that up. And then when I started bringing it up to like my mom and stuff, like she's like, "Yeah, your aunt has this," and I'm like,
why we ain't talk about this?
Again, why is this a secret?
Why is it a secret?
And even when we started having those conversations with doctors, and they were just like, oh yeah, this is normal.
This is what Black women deal with.
Black women have, and this is what you have to deal with. And then talking about the options behind it, and it was just like,
and all the options are always surgery.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you just cut yourself over. Oh, you can have a hysterectomy.
Yeah. So I had Nicole Gardner Scott here, and we talked about her experience, which she didn't have a miscarriage, but she had a very hard time getting pregnant because of the fibroids, had the surgery. Just the experience of it. She didn't know about it. Talked to her mom. Her mom's like, it's just this whole thing. So literally last week, I don't remember who it was, but someone posted on Instagram that they had a hysterectomy. They had to get, and the number of women in the comments that were like, yeah, I had mine last month. Yeah, I'm scheduled for 2 weeks. It's just like the fact that so many women are going through this and they obviously don't have very many people in real life to connect with because they're right here on the internet.
Sharing.
With strangers over this traumatic thing that they're going through. I didn't realize it was such a thing.
Yeah, me neither. Until I was very open about it, with my mom and my mother-in-law and stuff like that, and just starting to talk about it. And we did thorough research about it because I was like, I do not want to go through what I went through with Mesa. Postpartum or anything like that. I had even researched like placenta encapsulation. I was just like, because I was like, whatever it takes for my postpartum to be great.
Yeah.
I think I didn't have postpartum depression with Callie or Christian. I remember with Christian, that was like the most energy I had ever had. I was like,
how did it show up? How did your postpartum show up? Because I think that's the thing too. And I say this all the time. I think people be laughing at me, but I'm serious. Before I got pregnant, my thought of postpartum came from like an episode of ER when I was a little girl. It was like or Law and Order, like if you have postpartum, you want to hurt your child, you want to hurt yourself, and that's postpartum. That's it. It is such a range, and most people, I'm willing to say most people experience it in some ways, but it shows up differently.
Yeah.
So how did yours show up for you?
I would just be like so spaced out and just think about like ways I could either hurt myself or like physically change myself to like be adequate for Chris and for Mesa. You know what I mean? I would just think about it. It literally felt like a dark cloud over me, and just like it was just in my mind. I just had such dark thoughts about. I didn't really have a lot about hurting Mesa because I was so fractured in my self-esteem and me as a person physically, because I was like, okay, I couldn't carry this one baby, I barely could carry this one, they had to cut her out of me.
Girl, that's a whole thing. That is a whole thing. Beating yourself up around your birth experience. It's like, if the experience is not bad enough, what you do to yourself, the inadequacy of it all, the feeling like my thought was, how come my body couldn't do what it needed to do? Right. So that is a whole thing. Again, if you're the only one who's ever gone through it in your mind, then what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
Would you say that you had any type of, we don't ever talk about this with men, like what was your, I guess, postpartum experience?
To be honest, it was sadness, right? It was a sadness that, again, that came with the fact that like there's nothing I can do about it. Like our emergency C-section was heavy, and then later to find out that it was unnecessary.
Yeah, that's
it was like, but the way in which it happened, and like there were some things that happened on the operating table that I was privy to while Maddie was knocked out, between like the conversations that was had. Like we weren't there, and like this ain't a human being outside of just being my wife. Like this is a human being. We just like so callously talking about whether or not we're gonna let her be here or not, right? And then there were just some things that happened on the operating table where I just don't get, like, it's just like it's very visceral, and that. And then to watch her come through it or try to get through it, it literally took us 6 months or so until she could like move around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? And then that her lull or her funk that she was in was about another year. And in that space and time, we got pregnant again.
We got pregnant again. Then we had, miscarriage.
And so I was just like, I was tired, one, because, I'm heavy into the parenting of a newborn. Right? I'm newborn, then I'm at work, and then I check on my wife. And then two, you have, the sadness was just that, like, man, there's really nothing I can do about it. There's nothing that I know about it. Like, I'm a heavy researcher on things, but in this situation, one, I just didn't know what to look for, right? Because, like,
what's happening?
We hadn't left the house yet to run into those people to like be like, hey man, I know what you're talking about, or to start there. So Yeah, that's what it was. I tried my best to be as upbeat as possible and provide space for Maddie to feel everything that she was gonna feel, and physically, I tried my best to, soften the burden of the load of whatever I could, but I can't breastfeed, so
That part.
Yeah.
especially in the
Ooh,
middle of the
sure wish
night,
y'all
right?
could.
Like if you're in the, like if you're already in a physically depressed state, it's like you need to sleep.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, you're not sleeping.
Not
So
sleeping.
there's nothing I can do about
Yeah.
that except like hand the baby over and rub her
It's your
back.
first baby, so you're
So-
trying to do everything perfectly. Like I'm like pumping in the middle of the night. I'm trying to make sure like everything. It was really, really hard, really hard. But yeah,
But yeah, it's really just, I don't know, just balancing that weird dichotomy of like, man, this is really awesome because I have this baby here, and the love that surrounds that, and the admiration that you have for your wife for going through it, and I'm happy and all that. There's the joy of that, but then there's the sadness of like the aftermath, And
The reality of it
Yeah,
all. It's
yeah.
like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And I cannot believe that y'all been parenting like this. Like people just been having these kids doing all these things
Yeah.
for years.
yeah,
It's not for the weak.
it's definitely not for the weak. It's
Marriage
not
is
for the
also
weak.
not for the weak.
It's just not.
It's absolutely not. I mean, when it's good, but it's not always good. And so I love that you all can represent wholesome, and I'm going to say healthily, happily and healthily, wholesome marriage that's not just picture perfect. It's like, yo, life be lifing. We are navigating it as best we can.
Absolutely.
We're trying to maintain a friendship. We're trying to raise good people.
Yes.
And that's really what it comes down to. So as we conclude, I would love for each of you, Maddie for the women, Chris for the men, for the wives and for the husbands, to just share a word of advice that you've learned through marriage that you can share with someone who might be going through it right now.
Do you have something? Anything off the top?
This is the one thing I always say, like husbands, where am I? My
Right
camera?
here.
Right here? Okay. Husbands, try your best to learn to speak to your wife's heart, because that's where her baseline of understanding comes from. It's how she feels about what you're saying. You may logically say all the right things. You may fundamentally feel like you're doing all the right things. But if she doesn't feel it, you all won't feel it. So try your best to do the things and say the words that speak to her heart.
That's good.
Yeah. I think the first thing that comes to mind is stop thinking and doing, right? Stop thinking and thinking that you need to be everything to everyone, because that is literally costing you your peace. And that is literally not your purpose. Your purpose is not to be everything to everyone. That's God's purpose, and He has it on lock. You're supposed to do what you're supposed to do. And you sometimes have to stop and step back and reevaluate what really matters, right? Talk to your husband. What matters to you guys, right? Because yes, what matters to you is important. So I definitely don't want to negate that. But if you're in a marriage, it's what's important to you guys, right? We don't need, respectfully, you don't need a bunch of third party opinions, right? I'm the only person married to Chris. Chris is the only person married to me. I respect what my parents have to say. I respect what my therapist has to say. But at the end of the day, we are making decisions together as a couple. I don't care how social media thinks, what they think about my marriage. If they think it's great, cool. If you don't, that's cool too. You know what I mean? I'm okay with not pleasing everyone around me as long as my husband is at peace with me and I'm at peace with him. So stop trying to be everything to everybody or trying to make your marriage seem like it's an example for others. That's not what your marriage is. It is not a tool. It is supposed to be your safe haven. And do whatever it takes for you and your spouse to feel safe with one another.
I love that. I love that. Cannot let you leave though, Maddie, without telling us about Everyday Magic.
Yes, please get Everyday Magic, The Joy of Not Being Everything and Still Being More Than Enough. It is my book, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, pretty much wherever books are sold, Target.com. And it really, I talk about, our story in the book, and I really talk about how to navigate the work of every day, because it's a lot for, it's a lot for all of us, but of course, as a wife and a mother, I speak from that perspective, how my faith has helped me. And just like sometimes you forget because you got so much going on. So it's pretty much like a big reference book of like, hey, here are the appointments you need to make, monthly, yearly, weekly.
So practical information.
Yeah, it's really a practical
resource.
approach to everyday life. So I hope you're encouraged when you read it. Check it out. I read it on Audible, but get the physical book too so you can highlight some stuff and reference it.
I love it. I just love y'all. We got to hang out in real life
We
with people who do y'all have a lot of couple friends?
We do.
Because
We do.
do they come from church?
That's also the key, though.
Or no? Having couple friends?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're learning that.
Well,
Yeah.
the key is like in marriage and in parenting, you gotta do life together, man.
Yeah, you need Peter.
You gotta find people at your same level.
Yeah.
You gotta do it together.
'Cause we're not
That doesn't
supposed
mean
to
that
do it by
everybody's privy to the inner workings of your marriage,
Yeah.
but it is good to have
That
group of
village.
people.
You always reference that
The
village.
village is literally key.
Your birthday, that was the village, baby. I said she was not lying, baby. Look at this village. That is a village.
All the time, and I was like, no, y'all, really, the village is
Really?
not hypothetical.
No,
They're
it's a
here.
real village.
But to your question, though, yes, they come from church, but they also come from life. We have some lifelong friends in there. We have some people who are work associates that became friends. So they come from everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just
Y'all
that
just collect good people.
it's just that we've made we've made it our goal to just like curate good relationships with people all around us. And really for us, we're like, we want to, at this point in our lives, we want to have the people that are around us, the people that we include in our village, no matter where they come from, they need to all be able to
To coexist and be able to-
Yeah.
instead
It's
of
not
having those
the-
pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when we were
Which is why
teenagers.
8 people were at my house for the
they
birthday.
were. It was beautiful. That was beautiful, and I love that, not just for you but for your kids. And I know y'all have a big family, but the extended village is just like
the extended village.
I
is
love that for
really-
y'all.
Yeah.
Invite us next time. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. I'm gonna let y'all know if I get that invite. Okay, check my stories. Thank y'all for tuning in for another bomb episode. Be sure to grab a copy of Maddie's book. Chris, I don't think Chris got no Instagram. You find Chris on Maddie's page. Okay, he'll be on there. Okay,
That's where he'll be.
That's where he'll be. I love y'all. Appreciate you
Love
for being
you.
here.
Thanks for
Thank you for
having
being an
us.
example. Thank you for being so transparent because I haven't even looked at my notes. We didn't talk about nothing
No,
that I
this
thought
was
we were going to
good.
talk about.
Yeah.
Chris did it. That was
He
Chris.
did.
Chris
This
took
was
us
Chris,
down that
yeah.
detour and I appreciated
My
it.
North Star.
Yes. He's like, I did. You did it. Thank y'all for tuning in. See you on the next episode. Peace. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming content. And take it a step further and go ahead and join our private community over on Patreon because it comes with some pretty bomb perks, including early and discounted access to our upcoming events, behind the scene exclusives with some of your favorite guests, the opportunity to call in on an upcoming show, the chance to vote on topics and guests for brand new shows, and I'm even giving you unlimited access to my vault of business classes where I'm teaching you everything from Airbnb to developing digital products and everything in between. And you can get access to our Patreon for as little as $5 a month, okay? Get in where you fit in, and I'll see you on the inside. Peace.